remember when Luke and Ellie and all those we were at the falls, we would swim and play tennis and all that kind of stuff many, many years ago. And then I had the privilege to work with Tim. I did stuff, I did t-shirts for him and all that kind of stuff. So Tim and I go way back, but he is one of the greatest coaches you will ever meet. 23 years at Texas Tech. I'm gonna try not to cry real quick, but just an incredible man, an incredible family, and just know that what Coach Siegel has to say to you guys is one of the best in the world. So you know I love you, Coach Siegel's gonna love you, and with no further ado, Coach Siegel.
I mean, you guys are blessed to have this passionate man coaching tennis. I don't know how many of you know about my story, about my son, a few. I'm going to share a little bit of that, what happened to Luke, but I'm really going to talk a lot about this. Each one of you will receive one of these. And I think that after today, if one or all 7 of these apply to you, then maybe this will make an impact on you than more than you ever realized. I was a tennis coach at Texas Tech for 23 years. I loved coaching. But you know what I love more than coaching? My children. At the time, I had a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old son. And they played sports. And when you're a college coach, you travel a lot, you recruit, you're always gone in the spring. So I made the decision after 23 years to leave Texas Tech, and I began coaching the middle school at Laura Bush and the high school at Cooper. And that was my job, going to be my job for the next 9 years until my son graduated from high school. So I resigned from Texas Tech on July 8th, 2015. So we're coming up on 9 years. All right, I resigned for what was the reason? To spend more time with my family. 20 days after I resigned, I got a phone call that my son Luke was in a golf cart accident, and I was at the high school. So I drove over to where the scene of the accident was, and the ambulance was just taking off, the helicopter was hovering above, and the fireman told me to get to the hospital. So I got to the hospital, and about 10 minutes after I arrived at the hospital, my wife joined me, and I was put into a small room. And in that room, someone came in and said, listen, the golf cart that Luke was on landed on top of his chest, and he suffered head and chest trauma. And he was in cardiac arrest for 7 minutes, which means that he was gone for 7 minutes. Now, I had no idea how severe it was until I heard those words, and I couldn't believe what I heard. Now, for the next 8 days, we did not know if Luke was brain dead. The doctors couldn't tell us. Luke had 3 major brain surgeries, all within a couple of hours. At the very last surgery, the doctor walked in, and I said to him, what do you think? He said, I have no idea, but I know it's in God's hands. There's nothing else I can do for your son. The next day, another doctor asked me if Luke loved music. And I said next to sports, music was his favorite passion. They began to play the ukulele, and then there was on the monitor. So we knew that there was some brain activity. We spent 44 days in Lubbock, 44 days, multiple surgeries. We had no idea what was going to happen to Luke, but we were then transferred to Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth, where we spent 4 months. Now, 5 days after we arrived, we were in a room with therapists, social workers, nurses, doctors. And the last person to speak, the doctor, he picked up his iPad and he said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but based on Luke's MRI, he will never use his limbs, he'll never use his voice, he'll never open his eyes. Luke's brain is globally damaged. Now, my wife and I couldn't believe what we heard. I didn't want to believe it. Matter of fact, I didn't believe it. 1 month after he said that, Luke made his first sound. But unfortunately, he wasn't strong enough or making enough progress to warrant staying there. So after 5 months at 2 hospitals, we came back to Lubbock January 6th of 2016. Now it's time for a new life, because my son was nonverbal. He was G-tube fed, which meant he was getting his food through the G-tube. Couldn't eat, couldn't talk. There was no response really for the first few months. He was doing physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech. But all 3 of those, he was struggling. He was trying to do therapy, but nothing was really happening. And it was about a year after the accident that in a room like this, a building like this, a gym like this, at Laura Bush, filled to the brim, I spoke for the first time to middle school at Laura Bush. I had my 2 daughters right here, and I had my son right here in his wheelchair. And And what I came up with, and this is what's important for you all, at the time I came up with 5 inspirations from Luke. 5 inspirations from Luke. And I want to share this with you. Number 1 is to find your passion. Now I talk about passion a lot because I lost all my passion, almost all my passion. I was passionate about Texas Tech, our New Orleans Saints, the Texas Rangers, my faith, my family. I lost a lot of passion because my son, who was 9 years old, was never going to be the same. It took me a long time to regain some passion. And I've regained it because of what I'm wearing on my shirt. Team Luke Hope for Minds is a nonprofit that supports children after brain injury. In 2018, I became the executive director of this nonprofit. Do you know that in the last 3 years, we have granted over $500,000 to families all over the country. We're in 47 states. We help families in so many different ways. Financial support, through education, support groups online. We have a pediatric brain injury conference that we help families attend. 120 families came last year to our conference. What you cannot imagine is how many families, how many children have brain injuries. Every one of you, when you leave those bleachers, you're going to be able to put one foot in front of the other. You take it for granted sometimes, I'm sure, right? Don't take things for granted. You should be grateful for what you have. You know what I talk about sometimes? Is putting one foot in front of the other. But some days, I take a couple steps back. But it's my job every day to put one foot in front of the other. That's my goal. Find your passion. I hope everyone that's sitting here right now is passionate about volleyball, passionate about tennis, but more importantly, passionate about your family, faith, things that really, really matter in life. See, I think everyone needs to have passion about something in life. I'm now passionate about helping families every day because of my son's accident. The second one, don't ever quit. Does this not apply to teams? It applies to everybody in life, but certainly in teams. How many of you tennis players, you're down 4-1, you think, I don't know if I have it in me. Or in volleyball, we're down 2-0, I don't know if we can win it in 5. The reason I talk about don't ever quit is because my son never quit. Every single day, I was with Luke all day. At therapies, Luke would go to sleep, I would be next to him. I would wake him up, I would turn him, I would change him, I would give him his meds every night. And when I felt tired, I would look over to my left, and I saw a little boy that was not going to quit, so I never quit. So it's very important. And I bet you there are moments, even today, you might have come to school, and you thought, I'm not in the mood. I have fought with my friend, or my sibling, or my parent. But I think what's important now is to realize, guess what? Maybe, just maybe, by hearing me talk today, will give you strength that you didn't know you had. Because when you look at this, and by the way, tomorrow or maybe next week, each one of you are going to get a bracelet. And on one side of the bracelet, it says Team Luke Hope for Minds. On the other side, it has 3 words: fight like Luke. It's very important because when I look, this is a different one, but when I look at this, fight like Luke, it's a reminder for me to fight like Luke. So don't ever quit. The third one, I believe, pay attention closely, I think this applies to all of you today. And that is to lean on friends, coaches, principal, parents, siblings, because I leaned on no one. When the doorbell rang, when the phone rang, I didn't want to answer it. I couldn't deal with the fact that my 9-year-old athlete, he was a baseball player, played football, he was a stud athlete. I couldn't deal with it. So I kept everybody away from me. But guess what I realized? I needed those people in my life. And so when I get a text message, hey, thinking of you, praying for you, thinking about Luke, it's important. Why is that important to you? Here's why. As teammates, you all know each other pretty well. And what I would suggest to you is when one of you notices that my friend or my teammate doesn't seem the same today, she has her head down, she's not as talkative, a simple, hey, how are you? It goes a long way. Very important to recognize that. Hey, how are you? Matters to me. When someone comes up to me and says, you doing okay today? It matters. At the same time, when you are having a hard day, don't keep things inside. I did that for a long time. And you know who that helped? No one. It's not healthy. So find someone that you trust. The fourth one, another one that's important. Be careful, make good choices. Now, how many of you have heard that from your parent? Make good choices, right? I see a lot of nods. Well, Luke was 9 years old. 9 years old. On a golf cart unsupervised on a city street in a modified golf cart, which means it's taller, heavier, faster. You don't have to raise your hand, but I would imagine at least one person in this gym owns a golf cart or knows someone that does. I'm not anti-golf carts, but I'm pro-safety. Now, for some reason, this family thought it was a good idea to let two 9-year-olds on a golf cart unsupervised. The golf cart landed on top of Luke's chest, and he suffered head and chest trauma. So making good choices, be careful. You may think, yes, but that couldn't happen to me. I'm an athlete. I'm strong. Just like that, changed our life. Anything can happen anytime. So please, make good choices, be careful. Make good choices. The fifth one is to have faith. Now, I talk about my faith a lot, and I'm glad that I'm able to do that here, for sure. My faith has been tested every single day since July 28, 2015. But without my faith, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing right now in front of you. My faith has been tested, but my faith is now also very much stronger than it has ever been. The sixth one I added a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And it says on here, find forgiveness. Find forgiveness. How many of you think someone needs to forgive me for something? Or I should consider forgiving someone else? You see, it took me a long time to forgive. A long time to forgive. And listen, you know what I was always told? You can't heal until you forgive. And that's true. It took me a long time to forgive. A long time. The seventh one I added on August 19th, 2021. We're coming up on 3 years. We always knew that COVID was out there and that it would affect Luke greatly. And on August 15th of 2021, Luke got COVID. But it wasn't so severe that they took us home. One lung wasn't doing great, the other lung was fine. But about 3 days later, on the 18th, I noticed Luke was different, he needed breathing treatment. So I took him to the ER. And they put us in a room, not an ICU, but they put us in a room. And I was convinced we'd be going home the next day. And so that night, my wife stayed with Luke in the hospital, and I went home to get some sleep. I got a knock on my door at 4:30 in the morning the next day, get to the ICU. So I drove out of my house, about a mile down the road. I'm at a red light. I'll never forget, on 98th and Slide, right in front of Starbucks. I heard a voice. You're gonna be okay, but Luke's not gonna make it. I got to the hospital. The first person I saw was the doctor. The doctor said to me, I don't think your son's gonna make it. I said, I know. A couple hours later, my son passed away. So number 7 is to let a loved one's legacy live on through you. And so what I'm doing today is I'm keeping my son's legacy alive. Those of you that have heard the story about Luke, the one thing that Luke was a fighter. And that's what every coach wants their players to be, are fighters. You know, a lot of coaches will talk about adversity. There's adversity because we have injured players or we've had a tough couple of losses. That's not adversity. You know what adversity is? What my family is dealing with. I have, Luke will be a senior. How many seniors do we have? So those of you that are 17 or 18 years old, today's the 4th. In 14 days, on April 18th, Luke will be 18, and Luke will be a senior. And I was going to continue coaching high school until Luke graduated. But people always ask me after coaching in Texas Tech, will you ever coach again? And the answer is, I'm coaching. I'm just coaching a different team. Just coaching a different team. The one thing I will tell you, there's a couple of stories that I think will impact you. I was driving around after 1 year of the accident aimlessly. I was really having a hard time. I ended up at Marcus Street on Quaker and 98th, I believe. And why do I mention that? Because I didn't want to go anywhere near that. Because on the other side of Quaker was where the accident was. But for some reason on that day, I parked with my head down on the steering wheel, and I'm startled to a knock on my windshield. I'm praying for you, 1 foot in front of the other. And he walked away. Didn't tell me his name. But he said 1 foot in front of the other. Now, is that not a motto that we all can live by? To put 1 foot in front of the other. So I'm trying to do that every day. The second thing that I think is so telling is I was standing just like this. Luke was in his wheelchair, and my daughter used to play high school basketball for Cooper, and she was getting ready to play a game. And I've never had anyone walk right past us without at least acknowledging us. Some have said, "Can I pray for your son? What happened to your son?" Or a sympathetic hello. This woman walked right past us, head down, and about 5 feet after she turned around and said, "You were chosen for this." She walked away. Didn't tell me her name. And maybe, just maybe, I was chosen for this. My life as a tennis player on a professional tennis tour, my life as a college coach, maybe gave me the strength and the resilience to do what I'm doing today. Now, if you follow our story, Luke's favorite number, anybody know what Luke's favorite number was? Number 3. Luke loved number 3. And the football coach at Texas Tech does not give out number 3 anymore. He gives it to the hardest worker, the greatest competitor, in honor of my son. Court 3 at Texas Tech. You guys came to Texas Tech not too long ago to watch tennis, right? On court 3 it says the Luke court. It says the Team Luke Hope for Minds. That's the court that Luke is on. We have so many people that reach out to me every day talking about number 3. And so what I would ask you all is that when you're having a tough day and you think of number 3, hopefully Luke will enter your mind in a positive way. Not a sad way, but a positive way. Maybe that number 3 will give you strength, will give you a different attitude, a different mindset. Luke has inspired so many people all over the country. We have over 50,000 people following us on our Luke's Legacy Pray for Luke site on Facebook. Or on Instagram, Luke Siegel on Instagram. I know some of you are on Instagram. But I mention that because Luke was able to inspire a lot of people, but guess what? A lot of people inspired Luke. And I don't know how many of you know who Drew Brees is. Drew Brees was the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. He was Luke's hero. Luke loved Drew Brees. Every day we do the football or the baseball, but we talk about Drew Brees every single day. So guess what happened when the accident happened? I called the New Orleans Saints. I said, I need Drew Brees to send a video to Luke, which he did. It was an amazing video. He even said to Luke, "Hey, I'm going to throw you a pass one day. And after today, I'm going to give both coaches a video that he's going to show all of you." There's a video that is so amazing. You see, I told you about the New Orleans Saints, but someone after 3 days, by the way, 3 days after Luke passed away, I got an email from a woman who said, "I'm a songwriter, and God told me to write a song. The name of the song is called Running with the Saints. And I had a husband and wife duo out of Nashville write the music and sing. And we have a video that my daughter put together that you guys will love. It's a very powerful video. It's beautiful. It's called Running with the Saints." But Drew Brees has been to Lubbock to do an event. We've been to a bunch of Saints games. And Drew Brees, after I told you, he said he was going to throw Luke a pass. The next year, I came to a Saints game, Luke's in his wheelchair, and right before practice ended, one of the Saints players said, "Hey, would you put Luke in the end zone?" I said, "Sure." And his friend followed him there. At the last play of practice, Drew Brees threw a pass to Luke's friend. And so he did what he said. So the New Orleans Saints are special to us. You might have heard of a guy named Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has never played a game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Ever played a game for the Chiefs without on his right wrist a black and green. Do you have it, Kelly? I'm not sure if you have it on.
Yeah, I don't have it on, sorry.
A black and green bracelet that says Team Luke Hope for Minds. So when you watch the Chiefs play, or when you watch Patrick on 15 different commercials, you will see that bracelet. Do you know that Patrick was playing a game against the Patriots, and I'm watching the game, and all of a sudden I see that he gets sacked, and the bracelet is twisted. I go, "Oh no." An hour later, he sends me a text. "Send me bracelets. I can't play without that bracelet." So that's the kind of guy that Patrick Mahomes is as well. We've also had a ton of tennis players. Some of you tennis players, I know you're young, but you may have heard of Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal. All 3 of those tennis players sent videos to Luke. Last night, we had a huge event at the arena at Texas Tech. Andy Roddick spoke. Andy Roddick was the former #1 tennis player in the world, 2003. He's the last male to win a Grand Slam, won the US Open. He came to speak. because he had met Luke earlier. Andre Agassi, all these famous tennis players. So a lot of famous athletes and entertainers and actors have sent messages to us. But you know what matters to me more than that? Are people like you. How can you help us? Share on your Instagram, on your social media. Talk to people, because you don't know who you might impact, both from this or someone who might have had a brain injury and you didn't even know it. Okay? I know this, that it's easy for me to look like I'm really strong. He lost his son and he's able to talk about it. It's not easy. It's not easy. Every time I'm driving down the street and I see a baseball field, every time I'm around seniors, every time I'm around Cooper High School, I can go on and on and on. Every time I'm at Texas Tech. Do you know that I couldn't go on the Texas Tech campus for a year because it was too hard for me? Because that was life before the accident. But I'm healing. And let me tell you why I'm healing. And this is very important for all of you. I'm going to close with this. I mentioned number 6 about forgiveness. On July 3rd, keep in mind Luke's favorite number is 3. On July 3rd, I called a father, which I do almost every day. This father found his son in the bottom of the pool. But he saved his son's life because he's a first responder. He worked on his son for 35 minutes. He saved his son's life. I was so happy to hear this, but I hung up full of rage because we didn't have that. So I was angry and I was bitter and I was almost an out-of-body experience. I was so upset. At the end of the month, I was in Atlanta and I went to a church service, and the pastor talked about 3 things. He said, who in this room is dealing with bitterness, anger, and the need to forgive? After the church service, I met the pastor. I gave him a copy of my book, and he gave me a copy of his. It was about forgiveness. A few days later, a friend of mine said, why don't you come to a friend of mine's lake house? Guess what day that was? August 3rd. I didn't plan that. August 3rd, I'm reading about forgiveness. In a matter of seconds, I forgave the family, I forgave the hospital, and I was free. Still sad, trust me, but sadness is a lot better than anger and bitterness. And I imagine that each one of you at some time in your life, maybe this week, maybe today, where you're angry about something. But as I said earlier, find someone you trust. Don't keep things inside. And you all can make a difference. Do you know what the most important thing for me is? Is giving hope to families every day. Our event last night was called Inspiring Hope. But also, each one of you has the ability to be a great teammate. How many of you, raise your hand if you think you're a leader on your team? I only see a few hands. But guess what my answer to that is? Every single one of you has the ability to be a leader in some way. Don't raise your hand, but I bet somebody here wears the wrong practice clothes, is late, all kinds of little things, right? Well, how can you be a leader? By reminding that person, hey, don't forget this, don't forget that. Also, how many of you, I'll just talk about the tennis team here, how many of you tennis players would ever consider, when you're on the court, to look at someone else on the court next to you and say, hey, you gotta work harder. Come on, I need more effort out of you. How many of you would do that? Probably not many. And the reason why you wouldn't, either because A, you are less likely to give 100% all the time, or B, you're afraid of how your teammate might get defensive about it, right? But here's my thing now. From now on, tennis and volleyball, if you feel like your teammates could be a bit more engaged in working harder, guess what you can say to that teammate now? Hey, do me a favor, fight like Luke. Nobody will get defensive when they hear those words, fight like Luke. Because that's a positive thing. It's a reminder to fight like Luke. And that's not just in sports, it's in life, every single day. Because when you guys are out of high school, and you're moving on to college, or whatever you're gonna do, life gets tougher. And so you have to have your friends, your family, your faith. So that's my message to you all. I didn't even know if we had an opportunity to have a screen today, but I will definitely send you guys this video. Also, if you go on YouTube and you just put in Luke Siegel, you'll be able to see both the funeral that we had at the arena. ESPN did a story on us called A Father, A Son, and Their Saints. It's all about Drew Brees and Patrick Mahomes. But I hope today that you have been impacted by at least one of these 7. How many of you raise your hand if one of these 7 applied to you today? I think everybody should have a hand up. At least, right? And maybe more than one. But guess what? Tomorrow it may be 1 or 2, or the next day, the next day. Because you see, I had a choice. I have a choice every day to let the tragedy that happened affect me where I don't want to live anymore, I don't want to be a positive person, or I'm going to make a difference in people's lives. There's nothing quite like helping someone else. And it's a beautiful thing for me. I'll never take for granted. It's now my passion, it's my calling, it's my responsibility to help families each and every day. So we're going to finish with this. I want to hear loud 3 words. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Fight like Luke.
That was absolutely awful. Okay, we're going to try it one more time. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Fight like Luke.
Thank you very much, guys.
Hey, Coach Siegel, real quick. I want to say one thing, too. I want to add real quick. So, I want y'all to know I would not be standing here in front of you if it wasn't for Luke. So, I'm going to try not to cry, Coach, but because the day that accident happened, obviously, Coach Braylor took over, right, the program at Cooper. And Coach Braylor was the one that asked me to come be the coach at Laura Bush. And then subsequently, when Coach Braylor went out to Texas Tech, then I was asked to come to high school. So I wouldn't be standing here in front of you if it wasn't for Luke. So I just wanted to let y'all know that God has a purpose and a plan for every single thing we do. You know what I'm saying? So I just want you to know my love for you guys is because of Luke. And so we got to fight like Luke. Okay?
You know, man. Let me say one more thing. You know, I said this at the funeral, and I said it last night at our event.
Sorry. That's good.
That Luke was able to impact thousands of people without ever having said a word. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? He impacted people without ever having said a word. And I remember that each and every day. And I'm reminded every day, too, to fight. Fight for a lot of different things. I have 3 little girls. They're not little. 32, 21, and 19. And they lost a brother. In a lot of ways, they lost a father, too. And so I'm really working hard on that as well. And so Luke continues to inspire me, and he's changed me in a more impactful way than I ever thought possible. So I hope today Luke has inspired you. And I have one of these for each of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.